Hello, I'm Danielle Hannenberg, and this is my voiceover PowerPoint final for ECCE 2201 with Mrs. McCoy as my teacher. The first area I will talk about are the 3 competency areas from the syllabus. The first competency area that I learned about through this course was competency area number 2. This states to define the teacher's role in working with individuals with special needs. Through this course, we learned a lot about different teaching strategies, techniques, assistive technologies to implement, and how to implement those technologies. Teachers who use these technologies in their classroom will have the best outcomes possible with their students. They will learn more and be able to understand you through using all of your different techniques and devices. The second competency area that I learned about through this course was competency area number 11. This area states to identify typical adaptive equipment that may be employed, including assistive technology devices and technological services. So, as I stated in the first competency area, we learned a lot about assistive technology. It was a big portion of the course. We learned about many different types of assistive technology and which disabilities use which assistive device. We also learned that assistive technology helps students who have a disability to be equal in the classroom and participate as much as possible. The last competency area that we learned about through this course was competency area number 3. This area states to identify examples of changes in the societal attitudes toward individuals with disabilities, including examples of people first language. I learned of what people first language was through this course. I had no idea what it was before, but I now have learned that it is super important to use. People first language puts the person before the disability, which means referring to a student as a student who has cerebral palsy instead of a cerebral palsy student. It makes sure that everybody is treated as equal and that every child feels important in the classroom. The next portion I will talk about is how I as an educator/advocate will use the information in my classroom. So as stated in my competency areas, we learned a lot about people first language. Through this course, I learned that people first language is one of the most important things to implement in the classroom. It makes sure that every student is treated as equal regardless of whether they have a disability or not, because a disability should not define who you are as a person. It's important to know because it helps everyone feel like they are valued in the classroom, that their thoughts and opinions will be heard. And people first language helps students to be able to have this given to them. The next area I will talk about is being an advocate for my students. I included a quote that talks about teachers and how when they advocate for the children, they're able to identify with them more, because sometimes teachers can understand being biased against race, gender, disabilities, anything, and they can understand them more and help identify with them. So as a teacher, I would try to understand my students and what they've gone through. I don't know what it's like to have a disability because I don't have any, but I can, as a teacher, do my research and learn about disabilities so that I can identify and help my students more. If I think something needs to be added to their schooling to help them be better, I can bring this up with their parents. I can give them my suggestions and then have them go and think about it at home and see whether it's something they would want to do with their child. And then if it is something, we could go through the steps of creating an IEP or an IFSP, whatever is needed for that student, so that they can have the best learning outcomes possible, because that's what I would want as a teacher. And another way I will advocate for my students is to keep good notes about them and write down things that I've noticed about them. This way, if something does come up with the parents or I notice something specific, I would have set times where things happened and I would have my notes showing when it happened, what happened, so that I can help students and advocate for them in case something ever went wrong. The next part of this project was to talk about 3 different disabilities. The first one I chose to talk about was an intellectual disability. There are many adaptations that can be made for intellectual students, but the first one that I would use is to introduce one concept at a time and let them learn it until they master it. This way, I'm not overloading their brains with too many things at one time, and they can slowly learn one thing and get really good at it so that they feel a sense of achievement. The second way that I would accommodate children with an intellectual disability is to give them a quiet workspace. Along with keeping their tasks simple and not too many steps, having a quiet workspace can help them a lot. It helps them focus and focus their attention on the task at hand. There are also several assistive technologies that can be implemented for children with intellectual disabilities, and the first one is hypertext software. This software allows students to learn words they may not recognize or understand. They can select a word that they don't know and put it into the software. The software can then read it back to them and define the word and give them a definition so that they truly understand what the word means. The second technological device that I would implement in the classroom are computers. Computers are actually a window on the world, given capable instruction in its use and availability of appropriate software. There are so many different programs on a computer that can be used for children. I know I learned a lot through using different games, and that's what I would use in the classroom, are different games and websites that can help children learn. One activity that you can do with children who have an intellectual disability is to sing songs. Songs are a good activity because you can create a song about pretty much any topic, and songs can be repeated as many times as you need, and so the song could be repeated until the student learns it. So if it was a song about shapes, you could do the shape song every single day of the week until at the end of the week they might be able to sing it back to you. The second disability I chose to talk about are hearing impairments. There are several adaptations that can be made in the classroom, but the first one would be to have proper seating and lighting. Often, students who have a hearing impairment need to sit up closer to the front, and this can be a way that teachers can help these students learn. By sitting up front, they're able to hear everything that's being said and can understand you better. Proper lighting is also extremely important for students with a hearing impairment because they often rely on written text, and with proper lighting, they can see the text better. That's another reason for having the students have preferential seating, because if they're able to see the text better, then they will be able to understand and comprehend it even if they can't hear it. So the first assistive technology device I would use in the classroom would be hearing aids. If children need hearing aids, I would encourage it and have it used in the classroom, and I would make sure that my classroom has no frequencies that might throw off the hearing aids, that the students have the best time with it. The second technological device that I would use would be captioning. Captioning is an important vehicle to assist individuals who are deaf and hard of hearing with access to the media. So if we watch a video in class or we do something in class, to always have subtitles or captions on it so that children who can't hear or have a hard time hearing are able to understand what's being said in the video. A learning activity to do with hearing impaired children would be a puzzle. Puzzles don't require you to hear everything that's being said, and often students can understand how to do a puzzle without even giving instructions. Children can learn fine motor skills through doing puzzles, and they can also learn about shapes, colors, animals, anything that a puzzle might include. The last disability I chose to talk about are students who are visually impaired. The first adaptation I would use in the classroom is to give them extended time on tests and assignments and quizzes. Often students with visual impairments take longer time reading assignments and books and chapters, so giving them more time ensures that they can understand and learn the information just like the other students in the class do. Another accommodation that I would use for these students would be to produce worksheets in a preferred format. Often, children who have a visual impairment need their assignments to be in a different kind of format than the usual piece of paper. This could mean that they might need the font to be smaller or bigger or a different color, whatever is needed. As their teacher, I would make sure that if I had a student who needed this, I would accommodate them so that they can learn as well as the other students. There are two different kinds of assistive technologies that you can use for visually impaired children. The first one is Braille keyboards. They are a great thing to use for children who are visually impaired because it allows them to communicate and write on paper just like other students. Even though they can't see, they can still produce letters because they will be learning Braille. The second assistive technology device that I would use for visually impaired children would be audio tapes. If we are reading a book in class and they aren't able to see it, I would ensure that they have an audio tape where they can use that to follow along. This can also be useful if they have to bring projects home, because then they can listen to it as they're doing it so that they can also learn just like everyone else. One learning activity that I would implement in the classroom for visually impaired children is to do a tactile memory game. This would be cards that have yarn cut out in different shapes placed on the card. This way the student doesn't have to see what is on the card, but could just feel and make sure they got a match with feeling what the different shapes are. This would also be a good exercise for the other students to use that may not have a visual impairment. They could close their eyes and play along just like everyone else so that they can really use their sense of touch to find and see if they got a match correct. The last slide I included was my references list, and that is my project. Thank you.